Guess who's back, bitch? Maybe I'll read a book, or maybe 2 or 3. I'll add a few more paintings to my gallery. I'll play guitar and knit and cook and basically just wonder when will my life begin. Maybe I'll read a book, or maybe 17. I'll add a few more paintings to my gallery. Play guitar and knit and cook and basically just wonder when will my life begin. So hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you've been here before, welcome back, and if you are new here, you're most definitely welcome into my inner circle. I know I was talking all big and bad on Twitter that I'm coming here on my bonnet bit. As you can see, I'm naked right now. I'm not wearing my lashes. Oh my god, don't look at me. So today I'm going to be doing a review on The Grace of Kings by Ken Liu. 5 out of 5 stars. I think this is the best fantasy I've read this year so far. I wasn't expecting to love it as much as I did. I buddy read this with Edward, and Edward has a booktube channel as well, Edward Lawn, absolute sweetheart. I loved reading this book with him. He also has a review, and I'm going to link his channel and the review down below. Our messages literally consisted of us like being shocked at the different chapters and what was going down and the arcs of the characters. I also want to mention that this is not a fantasy book in the traditional sense. Magic in this book is very sparse. There is magic, don't get me wrong, but in the traditional sense, the way that we've come to know magic. But it's still a fantasy series. There are gods in this book. There are fantastical creatures that don't exist. This is the first book in the Dandelion Dynasty, which is the name of the series, and the Dandelion Dynasty is a silk punk epic fantasy. Like a lot of epic fantasies, The Grace of Kings obviously involves a war. At the very beginning of the book, we see that there's some conflict brewing, and that conflict ends up morphing into a full-blown war. There is Emperor Mapidere. I apologize if I mispronounced, but that emperor, he is a tyrant who conquered all 7 of the Tiro states, and basically 2 unexpected allies will band together to take him down and restore order to their world. And so the 2 main characters that we are following is Kuni-Garu and Kuni. I fucking love Kuni so much. Kuni-Garu, he's very charming, very wowful, very mischievous, and he is a smooth talker. He can talk himself out of absolutely any situation, and he yearns for adventure. He craves it so much. And then the other character is Mata Ziendu, and Mata, he is the opposite of Kuni, so he's very ambitious. Okay, he's noble, he's a great warrior. He is the son of a deposed Duke. He's more of the traditional hero. Think, you know, the Greeks, Trojans, Achilles, you know, that kind of thing. That's the kind of character Mata Ziendu is. And in the rise against the empire, these 2 unlikely allies become the best of friends due to a series of events that brings the 2 together and connects them, and they bond over their shared experiences. However, once they manage to defeat the emperor, who find themselves to be on opposing sides because they both have different views of how the world should be run. And because of that, a new conflict begins. I absolutely love The Grace of Kings. Like I said, I feel like it's my favorite fantasy that I've read this year so far. Like, nothing has topped it. This book made me feel things, and I've been numb for so long. It is incredibly well written, action-packed. It's got political intrigue, and what I want from fantasy is high stakes. I want my heart to be beating out of my chest. I genuinely want to be worried about my favorite characters, whether they're gonna live or die. I want situations where there is no easy way out and sacrifices have to be made, and this book definitely gave me that. So this review, I'm going to be splitting it up into parts. So this is how the review will be split up. I'll talk about world building, talk about the writing style, I'm going to be talking about plot and themes, I'm going to be talking about character, and then of course I'm going to be talking about my likes and my dislikes, even though this whole review is basically my likes. So I'll talk about the one thing I disliked about this book. So first we're going to talk about the world building. Now, me personally, I think the world building was done exceptionally well. It was intricately woven through the plot and through the story. I never felt like we were getting info dumps. The world building was done in many different little creative ways, and I think it worked extremely well. For example, the world building is done through songs. Literally, in the first chapter, there's this celebration going on, and there's a song that is sung, and this song introduces us to all 7 of the Tiro states. And just from that song alone, we get to know the patron god of that state, what the state is known for example, maybe fabrics, rice, wheat, or we got some descriptor of how their land looks like. I love how the world building was done that way, because the song was short and sweet, and yet we already know a bit more about the 7 states. And even little things like that, it could tell you if a state is rich or poor, because obviously if for one state it's going to say they're known for wheat and rice, and another state says, well, they're known for gold, you already see the imbalances of power, and I really enjoy how that was done straight off the bat. World building was also done through the gods, and this is one thing I really enjoyed about the book. Through the gods' grievances and alliances, we learn the history of all the 7 states, and the 7 states is a huge part of the plot and the story. There's a lot of conflict surrounding the 7 states, such as if they should be united under one ruler or if they should stay like separate independent states. And the gods also tie into all of that. So when the gods are talking and conversing amongst themselves, or you see what god favors which state, we find out why, and that just enriches the world so much, because yes, we are learning information, but I really liked how that information was fed to us through the gods. And then also world building is done through stories and tales. Now you might just think, okay, so the author is like saying it. Is that not an info dump? But no, in this book you have like storytellers, or the characters tell stories or parables or folk tales. And the thing I loved about these stories is that it's a story woven through the story, and it blends together seamlessly, and I absolutely adored it. They're all told in different ways, shapes or form. I've seen a few reviews that said it just felt like this was a history book, but for me it never felt like we were just being told a piece of history. In my opinion, my humble opinion, I think it was always done in a way that was fresh and had me intrigued and wanting to know more, because these tidbits, these pieces of history usually comes from these side characters, and you think you don't care, but the side characters always have like this interesting backstory, and then these pieces of history, these stories, these parables, they're woven through this side character's own story as well. And I found it very enjoyable. It didn't feel like we were being told all these pieces of history like I've seen a few people complain about, but that's just like me personally. So now I'm going to talk about the writing style. I personally think the writing style was very fresh and easy to get into. I know in a lot of epic fantasies people say the writing is very convoluted, and that is a complaint I hear a lot of epic fantasies. My own friend, I recommended A Song of Ice and Fire, and they said they couldn't get into it because the writing is overly pretentious. You are not going to run into that problem with The Grace of Kings, I can assure you that. Though the story is complex and there are many storylines happening simultaneously, I feel like Ken's writing makes all of that very easy to follow, and you forget that there are even a large host of characters, because there's a very large host of characters in this book and so many storylines going on, because Ken makes it easy for you to follow. Something else I want to say about the writing style is that Ken's use of analogies, metaphors and personification adds so much to the story. It never takes away from it, and that just makes for wonderful imagery, thought provocation and beautiful prose, which often switches between poetic / lyrical and also a very simple, straightforward utilitarian writing style. And I really like that it switches between the two, because sometimes, yes, it can be very poetic, and then other times it's just like very practical and straightforward. Yeah, it does evoke emotion. I have not seen any complaints about Ken's writing. I've seen other complaints about different aspects, but one thing you're not gonna do is this man's writing, okay? Because Ken can what? Write. Now we're going to talk about the plot. If you like political intrigue, betrayal, action-packed battles, you are going to love the plot of The Grace of Kings. I think this plot and the way Ken carries it out dispels all conversation surrounding that tropes are, you know, overdone. All like epic fantasy books are the same, they have the same storyline, or they follow the same structure. At first glance, The Grace of Kings, the concept of the book is very similar to a lot of high fantasy books that we see. Multiple kingdoms at war, a tyrant who presides over the kingdoms and is hated by the people, a rebellion / uprising, and obviously people who see the upcoming conflict as a chance for personal gain, you know, to rise above their station. Whilst this book does involve all that I just mentioned before, one of the many things, because there's a lot of things that I think makes this book fresh, but one of the many things that makes it different from those other epic fantasy books is the fact that it does not draw inspiration from Western culture, Western stories. I think you'll find that a lot of stories or concepts are only tired because they all draw inspiration. Most of them, sorry, I beg your pardon, most of these stories all draw inspiration from one place: European culture or white culture. It's all based on one singular perspective. If that perspective was broadened up a bit, these tired and common tropes and concepts are turned around and spun into something entirely fresh, unique and new. The Grace of Kings is inspired by East Asian and Chinese history and mythology. To be specific, it is based on the Chu Han contention, which was the fall of the Qin dynasty and the rise of the Han, and this happened in 200 BC, I believe. Even though there is an overarching plot, obviously, I do want to mention there are many subplots, and all the characters involved in these subplots all want different things, which I loved. I like that it wasn't just two sides and one side is aiming for one thing and the other side is aiming for another. All the characters have different desires, and it's like a battle for which characters are gonna get their way, who is going to win this battle of the wills. So yeah, I love the plot. At first glance it might seem like a lot of other epic fantasy plots, like it's the same, but there's a new spin that Ken puts on it and I enjoyed it so much. And like I said, I think a large part of that is down to the fact that it doesn't draw inspiration from any Western culture or story. Then I'm also going to talk about themes quickly. The themes that are discussed and explored in this book are obviously friendship and family. It also explores authority figures and ways of governing and running, and who determines which way of governing is right or wrong, who is able to do that. I think it raises the Latin question. I'm not even going to say the Latin, I'll put the line down there, but what it means is who will guard the guardians. I think that question was raised and explored. There was also, one of the other themes is it brought up a lot of philosophical thoughts on war, commentary on traditional gender roles, and so much more. Now I want to talk about the characters. There are so many characters in this book that some people may find it hard to connect with these characters just because there's so many and there's so many side characters. Some of these characters, they pop up once and we never see them again. Me personally, I never had this problem. I have my favorite characters who I was rooting for, who I was praying would stay alive, and I wanted them to win and I wanted them to have the best in life. Also, when I said, I just made a comment about there's some characters we see once and we never see them again. Some people might find that annoying and think that character has no relevance towards the plot or to the story, but I really enjoyed the side characters. I think they add a lot to the story, and I can't really explain that without spoiling the book, but if you read it you will understand how these side characters that you think they're not really that relevant, they enrich the story and they add a lot of context to certain conflicts and scenarios happening at the time. So I most of the characters' stories, if not all of them stories and their backstories and their history. I found it absolutely enrapturing. Now let me talk about some of my favorites. Kuniguru. Don't make me drink. Kuniguru is my baby. He's my absolute fave. I love him. I adore him. That is my what? My husband. Kuniguru is incredibly charming, and I always fall for those charming characters. But I think the reason that I love him so much is because Kuni is very unsure of himself, and I feel as if I find that quality very endearing. Kuni truly wants to change the world and make it a better place for everybody. He's very conflicted on what a better place means for the majority and how to go about accomplishing this better place. And I really enjoy his internal dialogue, and like I said, I find it very endearing how he doubts himself, but I also think it's a good quality to have. And there's a quote in the book, I've forgotten it, it's such a good quote about having to be wary of people that believe in themselves so much they don't question that their plans can have any faults in it whatsoever. And I really enjoyed that quote, and that is why I love Kuni. Obviously, from what I've just said, he wants to make the world a better place, yes, but he doesn't automatically assume that he's the best person for the job or that he even knows how to make the world a better place. And I just really enjoy that about him, and like I said, I love him. That is my husband. I feel like if you like Kaz Brecker, Kuni reminds me of Kaz Brecker, except the way Kuni and Kaz scheme is very different. Like, Kuni does it with charm. He doesn't really need to use threats and stuff. He's a very charming man. He can talk himself out of any situation. So he's like the sweeter version of Kaz, if you will. Then we have Gia. I adore Gia, and I really love her relationship with Kuni. And because this is a spoiler-free review, I'm not going to go into their relationship, but I feel like I might make a separate video. Gia is incredibly smart and crafty, and she's very well suited to politics and the games of the nobles and the courts, you know, the kind of games that royals play. And I think she is going to shine in the Wall of Storms. And the Wall of Storms is the second book in the Dandelion dynasty, because, you know, I can't spoil it, but obviously due to certain events from the first book, I feel like she will now have more of an opportunity for her talents to be utilized. I also adore Soto and Jin. I think Jin is going to have a very interesting arc in the second book that I'm fucking excited to get into. I've already started reading the second book, The Wall of Storms, with Edward, by the way, and I'm really enjoying it. I also love Luan and Kogo. Mata and Kuni are two sides of the same coin. And the interesting thing about them is that these are two characters that both believe their side, their cause, is just, so it's justifiable. They have very opposing ideologies on the best way to make the world a better place and how that should be done. And honestly, I found it very interesting to read. And then also, last thing I want to say on characters is regarding the gods. And the gods in this book are very interesting because they're not exactly a large part of the story, but the gods are involved enough that we know that they have their hands in mortal affairs, and the readers can see that the gods have a huge part to play in determining which way the tide turns in the war and for the mortals. They do have a massive influence on the affairs of the world, the state of the world, and the outcome of, like I said, this war. Gods are very interesting characters, and I'm hoping we get to see more of them in the Wall of Storms. From what I've read, we are already seeing more of the gods. Now I'm going to talk about my dislikes, and I basically only have one proper complaint about this book, and my complaint is the lack of women. Now, there are female characters in the book. Like I said, there's Gia, there's Jin, and there's Soto. However, my main gripe is that I feel like the female characters could have been much more fleshed out. They could have played a much more vital role in the story and in terms of their contribution towards the plot, especially because characters like Jin, Soto, Risana and Gia are there is so much potential for these characters. They can do some real damage. They could be so incredibly interesting and complex if they get that chance, and I feel like they are very interesting to read about. And the more that we get to learn about them and the more involved they get to be in the story, it would just add so much. You know, I love women, I am a woman, I want to see more women everywhere. So that is my one main gripe with this story. Otherwise, the reason that I didn't cut off ratings of my review because of the lack of women is due to the fact that there are certain events that occur in the book, and there's even a certain speech given which led me to believe that the lack of women was going to be rectified in the second book. And like I've said before, I've already started it, and already I can see that, yeah, women in that book are going to be a very vital part of the story. And I know that the Wall of Storms is the woman's chance to shine in that book. And there is obviously some misogyny in this book. The sexism is always addressed and it's always combated. That's why I didn't knock a star or a half star off of my review, just because I could tell that it was going to be rectified. And to be fair, so many fantasy stories by white authors that don't involve a lot of women. Some of the books don't even have women at all. I know that the Jim Butcher series is a very popular series, and I read the first book and I did not enjoy the way women are depicted, and yet on Goodreads it still had a very high rating. So there's no way that I'm going to debunk this book by a star or half a star, a book by a POC, by a Chinese author, because of something that I could clearly see from the text that it was already going to be rectified in the second book. I feel like due to the events in this book, it was done to set up things for the second book, because a lot of things in the world has changed since this book in the second book. So there was no way I was going to do that. So that is my review for The Grace of Kings by Ken Liu. Like I said, I absolutely adored it. I really hope you guys enjoy this review. Please let me know down below in the comments if I've convinced you to pick up this book. I really want more people on BookTube to be talking about this book. I loved it so much. Oh my gosh. And the second book, I feel like the second book is going to be even better. And even on Goodreads, even though we don't trust the Goodreads star ratings, this book on Goodreads is rated about 3.70 or something like that. The Wall of Storms, the second book, I'm putting there because it's on my bed, it's got a rating of 4.30, the average rating or something like that, which is so much better. So yeah, thank you so much for watching my review. Please like, comment and subscribe to my channel if you haven't. Okay, your girl is almost at 1k. Hey, what? Hey, follow me on all my social media, it's linked down below, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.